Really, really excited to be welcoming our next guest into the conversation. She and her organization have played a huge role in first my wife's life and now my life and many other kids that my wife is working with on a regular basis. Today we're going to be talking about mindfulness. A couple weeks ago, Time Magazine brought this issue very mainstream. I mean, Time Magazine, not exactly an alternative publication. On the cover, it says The Mindful Revolution. And it's very exciting to be talking to our next guest because she has been a part of this movement for a very long time. She is the co-founder and program director of an organization called Mindful Schools. And, of course, full disclosure, my wife, who was on the program the other day, attended one of their workshops a few weeks ago and said it's the best workshop she's ever attended. And believe me, she's gone to quite a few. We're joined now by the co-founder and program director of Mindful Schools, mindfulschools.org, Megan Cowan. Megan, thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you for having me, Pete.
I guess we have to start by defining what mindfulness means. People hear that word, they understand kind of the concept, they probably don't practice it. What is mindfulness?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think that mindfulness actually is gaining quite a big visibility in the world these days. And I think if you grabbed 10 people off the street and asked them what they thought it meant, you'd get 10 different answers. You might even get 10 different answers from people within the field. But really simply put, mindfulness is just bringing awareness to our experience. It's bringing awareness to the experience that we receive through our senses. So it's just bringing a deliberate, purposeful presence to the experience of hearing, the experience of touch, the experience of seeing, or other sense doors. But we can also apply mindfulness, or this quality of presence and awareness, to our internal world so that we can kind of turn the knowing faculty back on what's happening in our mind, so our thoughts and our emotions.
So some people listening might have already gotten a little bit confused or lost or disenchanted because, mindfulness. But there's science behind this. So for skeptical people like myself, I mean, you've done a tremendous amount of research. You've gotten a degree in this. You've been teaching it. You know it works. But for the skeptics out there, talk to us about what the research says about this practice of mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the reason I know it works is because I've applied it.
Sure.
And
Me
so
too.
the encouragement would be for people to kind of check it out, and it proves itself pretty quickly. But yes, there is research and science behind it. We're standing on a ground of about 30 years of research on mindfulness. Mindfulness was brought kind of mainstream and secular about 30 years ago through a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so that's the main way that mindfulness has been researched. And, not to imply that it's a silver bullet for all the world's problems, but it has been shown to improve kind of a wide range of things on mental and physical levels. So adults, studies that have been done on adults are showing that mindfulness improves depression, anxiety. It can be applied to insomnia. It's used for pre- and post-op surgery. It's used for headaches. It's used for stress. So there's 30 years of research that we're standing on, and aside from the research, the best way in is to learn it.
So instead of talking about it too much more in the abstract, can you tell me kind of one of the lessons or one of the practices that you do with children? Obviously, I really want to talk about how you guys are getting this in schools and how much of a difference it's making in schools. I think this should be mandatory for public education and private education practice for a number of reasons, and certainly because kids are becoming more and more distracted and potentially more stressed, and this is a huge solution to that. But give me a more concrete example of how this might be practiced. That's a new word, Megan. I don't know if you
made
used
that one up.
I practice it many things. In your real life, in real life, how is this used? Give me an example of it.
Yeah, and after we can also talk about why these programs are popping up in schools.
Absolutely.
Like you said.
I want to spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah, so mindfulness, the way I described it, can feel kind of broad and a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, and ultimately the idea is that we can apply mindfulness or presence to any of our experience, whether it's interacting with other people, whether it's the way we're navigating our emotions, whether it's the way we're noticing thought patterns, whether it's focusing on something to create a sense of calm. But basically what we've done with kids is we've broken all of that down into really short modules of 15 minutes each, so that each time we're introducing mindfulness to the students, we're introducing basically one application of mindfulness. So, for example, one of the first applications is mindful breathing. And we spend that module just learning to notice where the breath is in our body, learning to notice what it's like to stay consistent with a few breaths at a time, and learning to notice how doing that makes us feel.
Its incorporation into schools is so vitally important, and your organization has done as much as any to do that. Talk to me about why it's so important for children, because it's just as important, I think, for adults. I've been practicing this, and it's first of all, I thought it was going to be so challenging. I don't even know how I'm practicing it, but I know I'm doing it. And you have a great little chart or graph at mindfulschools.org that explains. It says mindfulness is a particular way of paying attention. It's the mental faculty of purposely bringing awareness to one's experience. Mindfulness can be applied to sensory experience, thoughts, and emotions by using sustained attention and noticing our experience without reacting. My wife has two major problems with me, and I don't blame her. They are one that's a big deal, one that's a smaller deal, but still important. The first is that I react immediately when there's a stimulus, and you have this graph here, Megan. Without mindfulness, stimulus equals reaction. With mindfulness, stimulus, mindfulness, then a response.
Right.
When I am practicing mindfulness, and I have been now for at least 4 weeks, it is a completely different relationship with my wife and with my children and with the people I work with. Ask them, and ask any of them, interview my kids. But the other thing is, and I can't believe this is actually happening. I have a joke in my stand-up act that I think I'm going to be 80 years old if I live that long, and I'm going to be on my deathbed. I'm going to look down and my underwear's still going to be on the floor. Megan, I've been cleaning up after myself. I mean, because I realize when I'm putting something on the ground, that I'm putting something on the ground, that I'm throwing my underwear on I realize it's happening. I've been trying to change that my entire adult life. I'm ashamed of it and embarrassed by it. I'm actually cleaning up after myself because I'm realizing the messes I'm making.
Yeah, you're really speaking to kind of one of the main things that mindfulness can address, which is our unconscious habit patterns, or things that we're doing on automatic pilot. And it's what mindfulness is doing. One way to describe it is basically like taking a flashlight and shining it on our habit patterns, so that we can be more reflective about them, and exactly what you're saying, start to notice them as they're happening, and that's where change is possible.
It's unbelievable when you notice the difference about when things are happening versus noticing it later and not being in that moment. I'm not sure, Megan, though, what I'm doing. I'm not sure what I'm doing differently.
Well, what was the encouragement or the instruction that your wife gave you?
I'm going to leave you if you don't change.
That's not mindfulness, that's fear.
Well, it is, though. But here's the thing. I went back to therapy, and that was a catalyst for it. But the fear was the catalyst. But then I realized I wasn't changing for her. I was changing for myself.
Right, and that's a critical part, is to have kind of the motivation, or kind of the self-generated interest in it, is what really starts to cause awareness to come to the forefront more often. And basically what you had was a willingness to pay attention to your experience and your actions more often.
Let me ask you about the importance, getting back to this about in schools, because I could talk to you about me and my practice of it forever. But what's most important is in my opinion, is that we get this in schools. That's why everybody who's a teacher, an educator, or a parent should be listening to this and learning about it. Mindfulschools.org. You guys have been traveling the country for a long time, teaching educators, teaching teachers, and parents, and anybody willing to have their mind opened by this and their life changed by it. Where is it in schools, and how is it practiced? And really, Megan, I'm afraid that it's probably been fairly difficult to convince people of its usefulness.
I don't really feel like it's been difficult. I think that there's been some good fortune in the timing of our organization starting and kind of the state of education and what some of the things that are lacking in education. And we've also really made an effort to be an organic movement and not grow too quickly. So we're moving into the arenas that are interested and feel open to having a program like this. And I think that one of the things that has set the stage is, ironically, kind of the deficits in education and in society in terms of how overwhelmed people are, the amount of stimulus and input that they're getting on a daily basis, the amount of technology, and kind of how all of that and the speed of life has started to train us to have a very short attention span. So there's a lot of dysregulation in education right now, and there's a lot of attention deficit problems. There's a lot of impulse control problems. So I think there's a general willingness to try something that is addressing those issues.
How does mindfulness combat attention deficit or impulse problems?
Well, it's similar to what you were describing about your own habits of reactability and cleaning up after yourself, that mindfulness is training you to bring attention to yourself, to bring attention to your body, to bring attention to your actions. And we're doing that actually through creating pause and stillness and periods of time where we're not engaging externally. So we do that, like I said, through mindful breathing. We do that through mindful listening. We do that through mindful movement. We do that through mindfulness of thoughts, mindfulness of emotions. In each of those cases, we're asking students to create a stillness both with their body but also internally, so that they're, for a short period of time, focusing just on the experience of breathing or just on the experience of listening.
Where schools have incorporated the practice of mindfulness, how does that look? Do I have English class, then I have phys ed, and then I have 15 minutes of quiet time? What's it called? What's it look like in the school?
It depends a little bit, I think, on the school and who's implementing it. It can be an outside provider, like Mindful Schools was an outside provider for years, meaning our instructors went into classrooms and taught 15-minute modules, and it meant that our instructors could go to, 10 to 12 different classrooms a day and introduce that lesson to each classroom and have the classroom teachers participate along with the students. But what's great about our trainings is that now we can train educators who are with students all day long to implement the mindfulness themselves. And that means that they can implement it at any time of day that's meaningful. So for younger classes, it might be in an opening meeting in the morning, or it might be during transitions. Or for a history teacher in high school, he or she might start every single class with 5 minutes of mindfulness. So there becomes a lot of flexibility depending on who's doing the implementation.
Since you've been working on this idea, on this issue, since you've been teaching it, what have you heard from your students? Because my wife has only been doing it for a short time since she took your workshop at mindfulschools.org when you were doing a weekend here in New York City. And she has had kids come up and tell her how much they love her. And she's had parents come up and said, what did you do? She's so much more calm. And I'm not going to say that this is the solution for the Adderalls and the Ritalins and the attention deficiency. But I think any parent whose children, or any parent themselves, who has attention issues, impulse issues, should definitely at least consider this. What could it possibly hurt? What's the feedback that you have heard? You're doing this full time.
Well, attention and impulse control is really the two main areas that we hear about improvement and where we see improvement and what we've seen in our research. And, you're talking about parents coming up to your wife, and we've had really fun stories from parents who didn't necessarily even know that mindfulness was happening, but their kid is coming home and recognizing stress in the parent or distractibility, and the kid is telling the parent, Mom, Dad, I think you need some mindfulness.
My daughter said to me, this is before I started this 3 weeks ago. I'm on my mission now, Megan. She said to me, Daddy, your mind is getting really cloudy. And so we had to give her away. But we'll at some point take it. But how dare she criticize it? She put me in my place so quickly.
Yeah,
It was so perfect.
Right, so they're gaining insight into their parents' patterns and offering a solution.
I just think that I've got no data here, but I just think that the screens change everything for adults, for kids. There's no such thing as being bored anymore, Megan, and we
I
know
mean,
that.
do you really need data? I think if any of us are honest about how we operate on a daily basis and the number of times we check our phone and how quickly our attention span is moving from one thing to the next, and kind of the anxiety, the kind of general low-grade constant anxiety that all of us feel, if we're honest about that, that's really prevalent in our day-to-day experience.
No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, it's such an anecdotal experience that I combat them so much on the program all the time when
Yeah.
people use them to describe different groups of people and issues and policies. But to me, you make a strong point. Is there anybody listening that can't relate to that? That we wake up with our phones, we look at them right away, we look at them all day, check Twitter and Facebook, and obviously my email constantly, text messages. It's just so much. It's so ubiquitous. It's so part of our lives. And if things, I had attention issues when I was a child.
Yeah.
Children that are already predisposed for these issues they're being bombarded by
Exactly.
so much. They need this. They benefit so much from it. Mindfulness, that is.
Yeah, and it's not to villainize technology,
No,
that
no,
there's nothing
no,
inherently wrong with it.
no.
It's just to acknowledge kind of the impact that it's having and start making more purposeful decisions about how we're counteracting the causes that it's having. And I think, one thing that's not in place anymore is the natural pauses that were inserted into our life and our experience and our day-to-day activities that they happened a generation or two or three ago. Things like just being outside in nature, or being outside. That the day is so structured that people are kind of from one indoor activity to the next, or kids having unstructured playtime. That the days now are very structured, whether it's tutoring or sports or music after school. That there's a lot less unstructured free time, and it's in that unstructured free time that our nervous system gets to settle down, integrate, re-regulate, and that's not in place in the same way anymore. So this is kind of reinserting the pause that used to happen naturally.
I'm almost getting emotional because of what I've been going through literally for the past 3 weeks since I kind of bottomed out, honestly. And when you talk about that pause, that's exactly, when I'm telling the expert my symptoms here and what I've experienced, and you're attaching the language to it, because that pause, it is gone. But when you
Yeah.
bring it back, and you can so easily, as I am right now, it changes so much. So
That's why
much.
I think you're noticing a difference quickly and your wife is noticing a difference in herself quickly, is because that pause is kind of critical to our overall well-being. And if we've been not pausing, then that kind of anxiety in us is felt to the people around us. So there can be a pretty quick shift that's recognizable on the inside and the outside.
Let me try to throw something at you, see if you can, put your expertise to it. But it's like, and you already just touched on this. It's like, okay, so I'm going to get done talking to you. I'm going to go outside on my deck. And I can either go outside and look at the trees and just breathe for a few moments, a minute, two, close my eyes maybe. But I like to just look at the leaves and the trees. It's spring. You can see so much happening. Or go outside of my deck, and I can immediately look at my phone and Twitter and emails and so on. And then I'm not connected to the nature, which I so love to be connected to. What's the difference there in those two choices that I can make?
Well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is how surprisingly hard that might be for some people to go out when you have a moment, and that kind of urge or even addiction to pull out the phone for usually no reason. And so just to acknowledge that if anyone's going to experiment with that idea, which I think is a great idea and a great kind of entry point, is that it may be challenging, but the difference is that you're either feeding the speed and the anxiety and the stress, or you're letting it disinhibit and re-regulate your nervous system.
Well, it's not. I disagree with you. It's not no reason. My narcissism tells me that there's every reason. That somebody could be wanting me, talking about me, and I need to know that right now, Megan. I can't wait.
That's the modern world, right? Everything is right now.
Yes.
And so there is a little bit of a reframe about where our priorities are and how we're operating and viewing time in the world.
Somebody might be wrong on the internet right now.
And you have to fix that.
I have to do that. I have to fix that. And it might take me a little while.
One thing that might shift is not only the need to know now, but the need to even respond.
I think that is definitely something that's taking place, or responding quite differently.
Responding
differently,
differently, exactly.
Impulse. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. As we wrap up here, we're talking to Megan Cowan, and she is one of the co-founders and one of the teachers at Mindful Schools. And you guys travel all over the country. Who generally comes? Who are you inviting to come to these workshops and to learn more about this? Is it educators? Is it parents? Who generally comes? Who would you like to come and benefit from this?
We want anyone who's working with youth of any age of youth, and that means educators, administrators, mental health providers, parents. We want them to come for the sake of the kids that they're working with. We also want them to come for themselves. That, one of our main philosophies is that in order to teach mindfulness, we have to sort of have embodied it and understand it for ourselves. So all of our trainings are geared around emphasizing both of those things. What can the adults do for themselves in terms of mindfulness, and then how can that translate in what they do for the kids?
I don't know if how many people we've gotten through with our conversation, but it certainly got through to me, and it's crazy to think that I never thought I'd be able to change, no matter what I have done. But with a combination of therapy and recognition and humility, and using these practices of mindfulness that you taught my wife, that she's taught me, my children, and many others, I can't believe it. But it's changing. My life is changing.
It's our favorite story is to hear from people that have been exposed to it. So I'm really grateful that you've had us on.
I even washed the back of a plate last night while doing the dishes.
That has never happened.
I thought my wife was going to make love to me on the spot. It didn't happen, of course, but she was impressed, and there is still potential.
All
Megan,
the byproduct benefits of mindfulness.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, my wife is so attracted to me when I'm being mindful. It's unreal.
I can see the sales pitch now.
There you go. Yeah, let's not even go there. But there's every benefit to it for yourselves and especially for your children. You guys are doing amazing work combating a very, very serious issue that children in America and everywhere are facing. I hope this catches on. I know it already has. I shouldn't say that. I hope it just continues to grow. And I applaud you and your organization for what you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to having you back.
Thanks so much for having me, Pete.
All right, mindfulschools.org, everybody.